Well, welcome again to everyone who's here and everyone watching us online. Great to have you here. Don't forget to open up the YouVersion app if you want to follow along to the sermon notes. I don't know if you've seen these people online. They're often people called influencers on Instagram, and there was this one young lady, pretty young thing, posting photos of her healthy lifestyle, out for a bushwalk in some rainforest area, drinking water, and just how healthy that was, and just doing the work to head on out. Unfortunately, her sister got sick of her being a fake and actually posted this picture of someone taking that picture. And if you zoom in on it, and the sister said, "This is our backyard." This is how far she walked, from the back door to this wooded area that they have in the backyard, and then she walked inside. And of course, her sister felt violated and everything like that. But you sometimes see these things online where people put an idealized version of family life online and say, "This is what my family is like," or "This is what my lifestyle is like. I'm so healthy, I'm so good." And other people are sort of on the other side of things and really just let it all hang out. There's this hashtag, a parenting one, and I won't say what it is because there's rude words in it, but it basically says, "I'm a bad parent. This is what makes my kids cry." So there's a whole lot of these of why my kid is crying. Because the ice cream cake I gave her is too cold. The muffins that come out of the oven are too hot. They're not cold. I keep dropping my fork. He can't fit all his crayons in one hand. The cheese is broken in half and I can't put it back together. The cracker is broken. You see the little bit chipped off there. And this is homemade soup. And we can relate to that if you've ever been a parent about doing that. And sometimes you have to break the stereotype of what this idealized family is. You have to break the stereotype of this perfect sort of family. But what exists is this tension between what's real and what's ideal, between what you know goes on behind closed doors and the idealized version, sometimes fake, of what people put up. Of "this is our happy family life, this is my lifestyle, everything is rosy." And we see that sometimes, particularly at Father's Day, of these wonderful fathers and wonderful families. And we talked about it in our staff meeting this week of how difficult it is to address a topic like this in our day and age because everyone's experience of family is so different. And it's not just mum and dad and 2.3 kids anymore. And there are different types of families, all relevant and legitimate. Single parent families, you're parenting someone else's kids sometimes. It's a Brady Bunch type family, we might say. And even depending on what country you're from, your experience of family is different. We were talking about this, how sometimes a marriage in another country, that's not what we would say as a marriage, or how grandkids are often brought up by their grandparents. And it's quite a different experience of family. And sometimes we look at other people's family and say, "I wish I had theirs. I wish that my mum was more like that. I wish my dad was more like that." And we see this idealized family sometimes. And there's a tension between what we know is real, what it actually is, and a better version that we would love to see. What's the old saying? You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. Something about a nose in there as well. There is real, and there's ideal, and there is a gap. And there is a tension of what we have. And I want to address this tension today and just look at some biblical aspects around that. Because sometimes even with families, people say we need to get back to a biblical family, the examples of the Bible. And I look at that, and I am the Bible guy. I love just expounding the scriptures and just looking at what the Bible says. But I look at Bible families, and fair dinkum, they are so dysfunctional. There are just so many basket cases of families. You've got Adam and Eve. I mean, no one could have had a better start to life than Adam and Eve. Perfect environment, walking with God in the garden. But then as soon as the first temptation comes in, and Eve suggests to Adam that we just eat the apple. And then he did, as so many other generations have done, we listened to the wrong people, maybe the wrong man or the wrong woman, and we choose them over God every time. And then they had kids, potentially, again, great experience being where they lived. And sometimes we hear fights coming out of our kids' room. But they had 2 kids, one that literally killed the other one. So just basket cases of families. And there was Jacob. It was Jacob and Esau, and a lot of stuff going on between those 2 brothers, and lots of skullduggery when they were younger. Jacob grew up and had kids, 12 boys. My goodness, that's dysfunctional right to start with there. Imagine having 12 boys. Far out. And the youngest one, the others loved him so much, particularly when he would tell them about the wonderful coat that his father made, or the dreams where the boys would bow down to him. And they loved him so much that they sold him into slavery in Egypt and told his father that he'd been eaten by a wild animal. There's some family love right there. And sometimes there's not good examples of fathering. Eli is spoken of as a great prophet in the book of Samuel. And Eli is mentioned, so are his sons, Hophni and Phinehas. And they were rotten sons. And Eli was a great prophet, and he was a rotten father. So there's not a good example there. There's King David. Again, I think one of the greatest descriptions of someone in the Bible is of David. He's called a man after God's own heart. You know, when we say that to people, it's, you know, people love the same stuff, talking about cars or whatever. Oh, you like that, a man after my own heart. And he's a man after God's own heart. What a wonderful thing to say. But for all the good that David had, he was a hopeless father. And his boys got up to some terrible stuff. And when they did, the Bible said he got sad. Didn't do anything. Didn't correct them. Didn't have a conversation, just got sad. And then they did something even worse, and it says he got mad. He got angry. Again, didn't do anything, didn't discipline them, didn't correct them or have a conversation, just got angry. So for all the good that David did, he was a hopeless father. And I know, give me a bit of license here, Joseph and Mary. It wasn't dysfunctional, but, they didn't have perfect environments either. There was that incident when they went to Jerusalem that time. They lived in Nazareth, and just down the road is Jerusalem, went to the temple, and they travelled in big family groups, so they were probably in a camel caravan or donkey caravan. And in between Nazareth and Jerusalem, there was this BP Roadhouse with the Maccas. You probably know the one. And halfway back, they stopped, for a toilet break and everything, and Joseph and Mary were in different groups, and Joseph said to Mary, "How's Jesus going with the trip?" And Mary said, "I thought he was with you. I thought he was with you." And they wouldn't have needed air conditioning for the trip back because Mary's view would have been so frosty, I think, of Joseph. And they found Jesus just chatting with guys in the temple. So you look at biblical examples, and you could do a whole lot more of the basket cases that are there. And really, as I've written in the notes, most of what's recorded about biblical families are mistakes to be avoided, not examples to be followed. They're saying, don't be like this. Now, there's some good examples. Abraham and Sarah had a wonderful marriage, and there's some really good things going on. But a lot of things are written for our encouragement of not to go down that particular path. Because that's the reality. We know how it should be, and we know how it could be, and we know how we want it to be sometimes, but that's quite different from what we actually experience. And then when we look at the teaching of the New Testament, where there is an ideal there, and there is an ethic put forward that has been worked through by Paul as he has understood the teachings of Jesus about love. And he's put that into writing to the churches that he writes to. And I want to talk about that for a bit, but I think in order to fully understand it, you have to understand the context behind it. Jesus had taught about love, that the highest commitment to the greatest good of someone else, no matter what it costs, was the ultimate, what God wants to see us in our relationship with him and our relationship with others. And Paul has thought that through and worked that out as it applies to families. But really to understand it, even how shocking it would have been. We read it, and if you know the passage, you'll see in a minute, it almost sounds old-fashioned. It's one of those things, oh yeah, that's nice. But I think we have trouble grasping how radical it would have been to hear something like this in the context of a Roman family in the Roman Empire of the day. And again, as I've written there, the New Testament teachings on the family need to be read in the context of the paterfamilias, or the father of the family, and the Roman family law of pater potentias, the power of the family, which describes the father's absolute autocratic authority over his extended family. Father had absolute power. Now, I'm not saying we go for this today on Father's Day, but this is the sort of power. The power to deny the kids, sell them into slavery, even to kill the children. Total legal right to do that if the father wanted to. Which made for good Father's Day cards. Thank you, Dad, for not selling me into slavery this year. Women had more, but only slightly more, rights than cattle. Women were virtually a possession of the husband. Marriages were arranged by your family, and a couple of sheep, a couple of goats, a bit of cattle, and you got yourself a wedding. And again, this would have created good family relationships in those families, because if your parents are choosing your partner, then you want to be on their right side. So, you got on well with your parents to make sure they picked the right person. When they had a child, the midwife would lay the child down, and only when the father picked it up again would that child be accepted into the family. If the father felt that the child was disabled, if the father felt that the child, they just couldn't afford to keep him, he would be just taken outside. That was the power the fathers had over the children. And I read somewhere that children often weren't named for the first couple of years in a family, because you don't name your cows if you want to eat them, because, you don't want to get too close to the kids by giving them a name just in case they die, because 25% of kids didn't make it till their first birthday. 50% didn't make it till they were 10. Life expectancy in those days, average, of course it's average, over 27. 27 years old, average life expectancy. So that was the sort of family life that the ancient Romans would have grown up in. It was common for men and women to have affairs. Men, of course, could have affairs, particularly with the lower classes. That was fine. That was nothing. And I laugh sometimes when I see some of the Roman life depicted on a mini-series or something like that, and what unfortunately people do, script writers usually, that really don't understand what family life was like, and they just superimpose a westernized, idealized view of family into a Roman situation where, Dad is kissing the little kid goodnight. And I don't think it would have been like that at all. It was cruel, it was hard, it was harsh. And it's in that context that the Apostle Paul, having worked through what Jesus said about love, wrote these instructions to families. And he said this: "Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. And again, we read that, and if you're familiar with that sort of passage, you go, oh yeah, and if you're not, it's sort of, oh, hokey, old-fashioned. And it'd be easy just to say, okay, that's it, that's what it says, let's close in prayer and go home. There's a bit more to it than that as you dig into what that really means. Sometimes husbands like to point out that first verse. I always say, well, actually, that's not written to you, it's written to the wives. You do what the Bible says to say to you, and then we'll sort the rest out. But it says, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. And sometimes what husbands are asking wives to do is not fitting in the Lord. It says, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Why would it say that? Because in those days, the husbands were used to being harsh. They were harsh with their cattle, they were harsh with their kids, they were harsh with their wives. And the new ethic is, do not be harsh. Don't treat them badly. Wives, submit to your husbands is not a do anything you want and they'll have to do it. Love your wives. Most of the time I know husbands that are loving their wives like Christ loved. Wives have no problems. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Again, probably quite a shock for children in those days to read that. Fathers, do not embitter your children. Other versions have exasperate your children, frustrate your children. Don't do that. The thing in my experience, most of the time, what frustrates kids is when parents treat one child one way and a different child a different way for doing the same thing. Or when they treat one child one way at one time and the same child quite a different way at another time, and you never know whether you're going to get a hard deal or a soft one. When parents are inconsistent, particularly fathers. And again, without trying to appear too sexist, as much as a mother's words are important, I think a father's words have an incredible weight on their children's lives. And Paul says, don't frustrate them by being inconsistent, by treating them one way one time, one way another, always looking for attention, looking for love, and not able to give that. That frustrates children no end. Do that and you will have the ideal family. But again, there's a gap. There's a tension between the two. Between the ideal that is biblical, that is right, that is accurate, that is proper, that is the teaching of the New Testament, and the reality that we all know and that we all live with. Because we know we don't come from a perfect family. If you're married, you didn't marry into the perfect family. If you've got kids, you didn't create the perfect family. You don't have to teach your kids to do wrong. They just seem to be able to learn it all by themselves. There's real and there's ideal and there's a gap. And we feel the tension of what we don't live up to. Because I think what Paul is doing, whether we see it or not, he's raising the status in families. He's raising the status for women and children. And he would say things like where women couldn't be a citizen of the Roman Empire full-blown like their husbands. He comes along in other places and says, there is no longer Jew or Greek or slave or free. You're all one in Christ and fellow heirs with Christ and citizens in heaven of equal value and right as your husbands. And that's a radical thing. Again, we fail to realize sometimes how radical some of this stuff is to elevate the status of women. And all around the world where marriage laws and other gender things are up for debate these days, the people that suffer the most will be the women and children. And yes, we need to get back to this biblical idea. And women in other parts of the world are fighting against the society, for fighting against their religion for that. But I believe Christianity upholds the status of women. So let's look at how we live with that. How do we deal with the tension? I've got 3 ways, 2 of which I think are bad, but often ways that we respond to the tension between the ideal and the real. And the first one is experience guilt. Don't you feel guilty sometimes that your family's not up to scratch? And it just seems to go together. Love and marriage, horse and carriage, parenting and guilt. Kids make us feel guilty. The Instagrammers make us feel guilty. We're eating that 4th slice of pizza while we're watching the lady go for a walk. And you just get this incredible guilt that my family is not like this and I can't provide like this. There's a lady called Kimberly Chastain. I love what she wrote. I don't know about you, but I do guilt very well. At times it seems I can feel guilty for almost anything. Also, as a parent, I mess up routinely. I can be short with my temper, and my words are not always pleasant. Also, there seems to be a new parenting article out daily that tells you how to parent. Of course, it feels like, to me anyway, that I always come up short. So there's an incredible amount of guilt that we often have in just this whole family situation, that I'm not the father I should be, I'm not the parent I should be, I didn't create the family that I wanted, other people's families seems different and better, and I don't have that. And so I experience guilt at the gap between the real and the ideal. And guilt can lead to shame about who we are, and that's when it can become really dangerous, because we go from just experiencing the guilt. The second way we can respond is effectively give up. I'm so guilty for not being the parent that I should be. I'm guilty for not having this marriage that I want. So I'm not even going to try. We're so overwhelmed maybe with the standard, so guilty with the things that we're not doing. So we see this, even if it's the biblical standard that we've just read, I'll never live up to that, so I'm not even going to try. Again, a lady, Susan Sutton, said, discouragement is a response that can, if we're not careful, lead to an unhealthy lowering of expectations, both of myself and God. Prolonged discouragement can become unhealthy to the soul. An unhealthy focus on weakness and imperfection can lead us to think that it's impossible to live up to God's standard. So consequently, we stop trying. I will never have that sort of relationship with my kids, so I don't care if they're going to get bitter, they're just going to get me whatever way I come. I'm not going to have that, so I'm not even going to try. The ideal is too high. I'm just going to pursue my own happiness instead of whatever God says, because I'll never get up to it. Maybe the child who can't live up to the family's expectations, so they don't even try anymore, and they might as well rebel because nothing they do gives them the attention that they deserve. So we stop trying. And that's the worst thing that we can do. And that's when Satan attacks us as people. That's when we make bad decisions on what and who we will pursue. And I want to suggest an alternative that is none of those two. It is not experiencing guilt. It is not effectively giving up. But it is embracing the grace of God. Now, I've talked about grace, I think my commitment to understanding and living out grace. And grace is not lowering the bar so anyone can do anything and it's okay. Grace is continuing to have the standard and have the ideal that we would go for, the biblical goal to have a family that is loving and caring and gentle and everything like that, and keeping it as high as we can, not lowering the bar, but at the same time embracing the grace of God that will give us the strength to do that even when we can't live up to it. It is relying on the power of God to give us what we don't have. It is relying on the power of God to give us a love, a joy, a peace, a patience, all those things that grace provides. So that even if we don't live up to those expectations, God will give us the strength to try to do that. Jesus did that in his ministry. He pointed to and taught the ideal, yet didn't condemn those who couldn't live up to it. On one occasion, he was dealt a trick question about divorce, and it was one of these things that people that were against him thought that they could trick him and twist everything, and he so confused them that just accept the reality of divorce, and they thought if he answered one way he'd be weak, and he answered one way he'd be cold and heartless. Yet he didn't condemn people. Is this a rule or is it not a rule? One occasion there was a lady caught in adultery, brought before him, and again they thought if he lets them off, he'd be too soft on sin, and if he does what he should do and stone her, then he'd be too harsh, and we can get him either way. Yet Jesus didn't do that, and the story finishes in John 8. It says, those who heard him began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left and the woman was standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you. Now go and leave your life of sin." Did Jesus reduce the standard and say, "Oh, that's okay, you can get a do-over, you can keep doing that, that's fine"? No. He kept the standard about what was moral and what was ethical and what was pleasing to God. He asked her to leave that life that she was leading. But at the same time, he didn't condemn her for doing that. It doesn't mean being so guilty that we give up trying to be a better parent or a grandparent or a father or a child or a mother. It doesn't mean that we give up. It doesn't mean that because there is this happening to me or that happening to me, I can't do it, so I won't even try. It's saying, God, give me the strength to do this. Give me the power that I don't have to overcome this, so I live up to the ideal. And when we're tempted to feel guilty that we haven't lived up to the ideal, we embrace grace again. And we have forgiveness for the times we've fallen short. And we do it all over again. Don't get into guilt. Don't get into giving up. Keep going. Keep trying. Yes, we have feet of clay sometimes. Yes, we've been dealt some pretty bad cards in the hand that we've been given. But with God's help, we can do way better than we could by ourselves. I want to ask as we finish up all the dads, the men, the boys to stand up, and I want to pray for you. And Bruce and the team will lead us in our last song for this morning. Stand up, guys. Let's pray. Father, I thank you first of all that you're our loving Heavenly Father. That whether we have good models, good role models or not, Lord, you are our loving Heavenly Father who models grace and forgiveness and love to us in so many ways. And Lord, I pray for all the guys here. Some are dads, some are not yet. And Lord, I pray for them that you would help them live up to that ideal that that is in the Scriptures, not the unreal ones, not the fake ones. But Lord, you'd help them not give up on that goal to be the best dads they can be. Help us all get over the guilt that we feel when we're not, the tendency to give up because it just seems too hard. And Lord, work within us to give us the strength to have those qualities that we're lacking. If it's that perseverance, if it's that real love, but Lord, whatever we're lacking, would you work within us to help us recognize our weakness and rely on your strength. Lord, bless the guys who are good dads, who try their best, who are just in there every day, supporting their family, trying to be good examples. Lord, honour them. Bless them for the work that they do. May we honour them today in our families. Thank you that in the church it's not just a human family. Lord, it's a worldwide family of you. And as much as families are important, your eternal family, your kingdom family is so important too. And thank you in the church that even if there's not in our own families, people that can be good role models, thank you, Lord, that you've provided uncles and fathers and grandfathers for us to look up to see what it's like to be a father who walks with you, that's been doing it longer than we've been alive. May they have good examples of what that looks like in the church. Lord, bless these men. Give them a strength beyond their own to live up to the roles and the expectations that are in our society. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. It is Father's Day, and of course some key things about fathers are what? Dad bods, of which I have one. Dad style, which I am as well. And of course, dad jokes. So, you ready for some dad jokes? I had a dream the other night. It was a dream. It was this apparition. I'm not sure what it was. It was an ocean. It was filled with orange soft drink. But anyway, it was just a fantasy. Speaking of dreams, I had a dream that I had a giant marshmallow that I ate. And when I woke up, my pillow was gone. Speaking of pillows, did you know there's this new pillows? They're corduroy pillows. Have you seen that in the news? Corduroy pillows. You should have seen it. It makes headlines everywhere. My kids were hopeless going to sleep. Speaking of sleeping, they always fought to have a nap. It's like they were resisting arrest. I'm not sure. Anyway, did you hear there was a kidnapping at school? But then he woke up, so that was okay. Anyway, look, there's lots of dad jokes, all on the same theme. I don't take myself too seriously, but we take God seriously.